Picture the notification lighting up your phone screen. I can't make it tonight. It's no var bear. We have all known that friend, the one who cancels plans at the 11th hour. Or perhaps you are that friend. For decades, the extrovert ideal has labeled this behavior as avoidance, laziness, or even social ineptitude. But modern neuroscience reveals a starkly different reality. We are currently witnessing a paradigm shift, a solitude renaissance. What society dismisses as flaking is often a sophisticated biological self-regulation mechanism known as solitude crafting. If you find yourself genuinely exhilarated by the prospect of a Friday night alone, you aren't broken. You are simply operating on a different neural architecture. Let's decode the biology behind your need for peace. Part 1. The Neurobiology of Stimulation. To understand why you prefer the silence of a living room to the pulse of a nightclub, we must look past personality quirks and into the architecture of the brain itself. Society often mislabels this preference as being asocial or boring. However, neuroscience defines it through a mechanism known as optimal arousal theory. At the base of your brainstem lies a network of neurons called the Reticular Activating System, or RAS. Think of the RAS as a biological gatekeeper, or a volume knob that controls the amount of sensory information flooding into your cortex. For the extrovert, this gate is naturally restrictive. Their baseline level of cortical arousal is low. To feel normal or alert, they require intense external input. They are biologically hungry for stimulation. The noise, the movement, the chaos of a crowded bar. These aren't just fun for them. They are necessary fuel to bring their brain activity up to an optimal level. But for you, the person who finds relief in canceling plans, the mechanism works in reverse. Your RAS is naturally open. Your baseline cortical arousal is already hovering at a high, nearly optimal level, even when you are sitting in complete silence. You do not need the world to wake you up. You are already wide awake. Recent neuroimaging studies from 2025 using fMRI technology have visualized this distinction with startling clarity. When subjected to auditory distractions, the brains of those with high cortical arousal showed a significant degradation in attentional control compared to their extroverted counterparts. This provides hard biological evidence for what you have always felt. A loud environment doesn't just annoy you, it depletes you. Therefore, the decision to stay home is not an act of laziness. It is a strategic biological maneuver. You are not hiding from the world. You are regulating a nervous system that is already running at full capacity. Part 2. The chemistry of contentment. One of the most persistent myths in modern psychology is that introverted individuals, those who prefer the sanctuary of home, are somehow less happy than their outgoing peers. Society often equates happiness with excitement, a visibly high-energy state. But this perspective fundamentally misunderstands human neurochemistry. The difference lies not in the amount of happiness you feel, but in the specific neurotransmitter your brain prioritizes to achieve it. For the extrovert, the primary driver is dopamine. Dopamine is the chemical of more. It is the molecule of anticipation, risk, and external reward. Genetic research from 2024 confirms that extroverts possess a lower sensitivity to dopamine, meaning they require larger, more frequent floods of this chemical to feel satisfied. Their brains are wired to the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight mode, which mobilizes energy for action. When they enter a crowded party or chase a new social connection, they are literally hunting for a dopamine hit. But if you are someone who feels drained by such pursuits, your brain is not defective. It is simply running on a different fuel source. Acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is the chemical of depth. Unlike the quick, intense spike of dopamine, acetylcholine is released during states of calm, focused attention, and safety. It powers the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode. When you choose to stay home, you are not retreating into a void. You are actively engaging a distinct neural pathway known as the long acetylcholine pathway. While dopamine travels a short, direct route to the reward centers, acetylcholine traverses a much longer, more complex network throughout the brain. It moves through areas responsible for long-term memory, empathy, and deep emotional processing. This explains why a quiet evening reading a book or engaging in a deep one-on-one conversation feels more visceral and satisfying to you than a night of loud celebration. You are not avoiding the thrill of life. You are trading the cheap, short-term buzz of dopamine for the sustainable, deep-seated contentment of acetylcholine. One is a spark, the other is a slow-burning fire. Both are valid, but only one warms you without burning you out. Part 3. The architecture of control. Beyond neurochemistry, there is a structural necessity to the preference for solitude. The absolute need for environmental control. The original script posited that, for some, control is not a luxury, but survival. Modern psychology expands on this through the framework of sensory processing sensitivity, SPS. Found in approximately 20 to 30% of the population, this trait indicates a nervous system that processes sensory data with profound depth and permeability. For the average person, the brain effectively filters out background static, the hum of a refrigerator, the flicker of fluorescent lighting, or the subtle shift in a stranger's tone. But for the high-sensitivity individual, the filter is porous. Recent fMRI studies from 2025 show increased activation in the insula and cingulate cortex areas responsible for sensory integration, meaning the world is quite literally louder for you. In the chaotic unpredictability of the outside world, your cognitive resources are rapidly depleted by the sheer effort of managing this data flood. This is where the home transforms from a mere residence into what psychologists call a restorative niche. Within these four walls, you possess the power to calibrate your environment to your exact biological threshold. You control the lighting to minimize visual glare. You eliminate the acoustic friction of background noise. You remove the exhausting demand of surface acting, the social mask required to navigate public spaces. Crucially, this is not just about avoiding pain. It is about accessing a unique form of pleasure known as vantage sensitivity. Research indicates that sensitive individuals do not just suffer more from negative environments, they benefit disproportionately from positive ones. A quiet room with a soft blanket and a dim lamp is not simply neutral to you. It provides a rich, restorative experience that the less sensitive brain may never fully comprehend. Part 4. The creative incubator. There is a reason why your most profound realizations rarely occur in a boardroom or a busy cafe, but rather in the silence of a shower, a quiet corner, or a thought spiral at 2 a.m. For years, productivity culture has viewed doing nothing as a waste of time. However, neuroscience identifies this state as the activation of the default mode network, DMN, previously misunderstood as the brain's resting state. The DMN is actually the engine of our highest cognitive functions: self-reflection, autobiographical memory, and crucially, future simulation. But here is the catch. The DMN is notoriously shy. It cannot function when you are busy processing the external world. When you are navigating a social gathering, your brain engages the executive control network, ECN, and the salience network to manage the influx of faces, voices, and social cues. Biologically, these networks function antagonistically to the DMN. You cannot deeply reflect while you are actively reacting. By choosing solitude, you are effectively flipping a neural switch. You disconnect the executive control network, allowing the default mode network to come online. This transition initiates a process psychologists call incubation. In the low-stimulation environment of your home, your brain is free to engage in remote associative thinking, the ability to connect seemingly unrelated concepts to form novel solutions. A 2025 study on the role of the DMN in creativity confirmed that high creative individuals are those who can effectively access this network without interruption. Therefore, staying home is not an act of stagnation. It is a functional prerequisite for innovation. You are securing the silence required for your mind to stop processing data and start synthesizing wisdom. Part 5. The modern paradigm. We are living through a pivotal moment. The narrative is changing. In 2025, we are witnessing the rise of a new cultural ethos. JOMO, the joy of missing out. It is a deliberate rejection of the hustle culture that dominated the previous decade. We see it in the nesting movement, where the home is cultivated as a sanctuary, and in the reclaiming of slow mornings. Affectionately termed herkle-dirkling, these are not trends of laziness. They are acts of resistance against a hyper-stimulated world. However, a critical distinction must be made. A groundbreaking study published by the University of Michigan in February 2025, titled The Loneliness Paradox, revealed a startling truth. The study found that solitude itself is not the enemy. The damage comes from the stigma attached to it. When society tells you that being alone is a failure, you experience maladaptive solitude, a state defined by fear and avoidance. But there is a second state. Adaptive solitude. This is solitude driven by autonomy. It is the conscious choice to step back, not because you fear the world, but because you respect your own battery. Psychologists now refer to this practice as solitude crafting. Just as one crafts a career or a relationship, you are crafting a relationship with yourself. When you choose to stay home to nest or decompress, you are not hiding. You are engaging in a high-performance recovery protocol. So, ask yourself the defining question. Are you staying home because the world feels too heavy, or because your inner world feels so rich? If it is the latter, you are not missing out. You are simply prioritizing a different kind of wealth. The verdict of modern neuroscience is unequivocal. Your preference for the indoors is not a personality defect, nor is it a failure to adapt. It is a specific evolutionary strategy. You possess a nervous system engineered for depth over noise, for peace over performance. The very sensitivity that makes the outside world overwhelming is what makes your inner world so expansive. It allows for deep processing, profound empathy, and the kind of creativity that only silence can incubate. Home, for you, is not a fortress of fear. It is the laboratory of the self, a controlled environment where your biology shifts from surviving the chaos to thriving in the quiet. So, if you are someone who turns down an invitation without guilt to spend a Saturday night in the company of your own thoughts, if you find beauty in the way the light hits the room at sunset, you are not broken. You are simply living in alignment with your design. If this analysis resonates with you, you have found your tribe. Hit subscribe to join a community that understands the power of the quiet. And if you want to understand the other side of your psychology, the traits that society often hides, the next documentary will uncover layers of your personality you didn't know existed. Click here. You will understand why.